We'll get straight into it. We're going to start with apologies for absence. We have one apology, which is for Councillor Chapel, who's otherwise engaged. Everyone else is here, so do we accept his apology, which I think we need to do. I won't take it. 2531 declarations of interest. We need to consider declarations of interest from members who are to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or to declare any other interests.
I have other interests to declare. You will all have seen that there is an application under the grants which bears my name, so I should withdraw from that. I wonder also, and I'll do the chair's discretion, there are also two applications, one from the Fringe and one from the, whatever it is, Gwyn's application. And they're both members of the Culture Club, which I'm also a member of, so I'm happy to withdraw from those as well.
Is that just the Fringe? So did you say there was another one as well?
It's the
Festival of Music and Drama.
Yeah, the festival, yeah, that one.
So it might be.
I'll do the 3 items, yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy to withdraw from all of them.
Yeah, my wife is a member of the Elder Bishop Club Society, so I should withdraw from that. But no other declarations. So wonderful. In that case, we'll move on to 2532 representations from interested parties. Seeing none, we move on to 2533 consideration of requests from interested parties. Seeing none. Item 2534 minutes of previous meeting, that was a meeting held in December to approve the signing of those minutes. I wasn't there, so I asked those who were there whether there were any questions or whether you're happy to propose that those are approved. Objections, that I would propose that those minutes are approved. Councillor Clark, secondly Councillor Shearer, all those in favour? Wonderful. So moving on to a number of financial matters. 253501 to receive the sales survey review of 2025 and 2026. We received that, but to my knowledge, the only investment we have is a property which bears interest. So we received it. I don't intend to debate it unless everybody really need it.
Excuse me.
James, hearing none.
They used the word under the hood.
They did. They should sack them. 253502 to review the risk assessment for financial management for the council meeting. That's been prepared. It's up there, and I have one comment, but I'm wondering if anybody else has any comments on that. Ian.
I have two questions. One of them is point 1.5, and then the box below that, review of rankings and leases.
Yeah.
Are we currently reviewing leases? Or is it on the back of the building thing?
I don't know. Has that been? I thought the States were going to be looking at it. Are we waiting for this business thing to come back?
So I've discovered that we haven't actually reviewed
For a while.
rates for a while. So one of the things I picked up was it says annual lessons up there. Hasn't had anything at all. So thank you for that reminder. I think estates will need to pick it up as a result of the
Yeah.
estate review, because one of the questions we specifically asked in there is what should suddenly massively helpful. We will also have the rugby club coming up. We will get our looking for recommending take commercial advice.
Yeah.
Agents advice for that. So it's all real estate. Yes.
And the other one is 3.7, the maintenance. It says sort of broadly, annual maintenance inspection by independent contractors.
Yeah.
Is that an annual maintenance inspection of everything? Or?
I don't know. I have a question about anyway, which is ministry regional report. I don't know if I've seen that report.
We
So I'm
did
not sure what's happening.
the playgrounds and stuff, don't
Mhm.
we?
Yeah,
I
that's
was
what they're
wondering if
on.
that's just what it meant, because it,
Yeah.
we do lawn mowers and buildings and grass and.
Yeah, but I think that also refers to the things that we were talking about with regards to the budget, with putting money aside to, the life of something, when it gets to the end of the life, looking to replace it.
Well, I haven't view, I haven't forgotten either of those points. My own view is that the risk management, risk assessment thing, given that we need to approve it next week council meeting, perhaps goes forward as it is, depending on who's around the table. But I think it needs review completely because it's a very crude, I think it's enough. It's very crude
It's an old document.
assessment, because all we do is assess the risk, we've got nothing there about probability, nothing there about mitigation at all. There's no description of accepting risk or to frame the risk in any way. So I think that's something that ideally I would volunteer to look at, redo risk assessment forms as it stands. I think it just isn't quite right. And that might pick up your piece about maintenance and the only 154 memories to make sure they actually happen, so that we can put where we say we're going to review, we actually put the review in the standing orders for the development committee. Any other comments on the risk assessment, Max?
Yes, sorry, I went down to get a glass of water, and you may have said this already, but apologies if not. Under 3.3 assets, the first of the two rows on that, you'll see that it says the States Committee inspects, and we do an annual inspection, as it says there. I just slightly worry whether that's actually enough, because the Estates Committee are not necessarily expertise in what they're assessing.
Somewhere
We do that.
it mentions a visual inspection.
Sorry?
Somewhere it mentions a visual inspection. This is document. Again, that's a different thing to a whole inspection.
Yeah, I suspect, sorry if I
Yes.
I suspect this line comes from the best practice where because it mentions the asset register, and the asset register is supposed to be verified 12 monthly by an elected member and an officer. So I suspect it's simply implementing that. So it's not inspecting them for quality or safety or anything. It's yes, the table is still here.
Yes. It was not so much that, it was again, this is where I'm slightly confused. I think because we've mixed up the annual inspection that the Estates Committee does of the estates with the assets, and they are kind of related, but I think we just need to be clear about what the responsibilities are. That's all I'm saying.
So are you saying, James, that first line of 3.3 assets is inspection of the asset register to make sure it's appropriate?
No, it's inspecting the assets or verifying the assets is the term that's used that are on the register still physically are findable. And so I suppose the bit Max is addressing is that appears to have been delegated to the Estates Committee, and either the Estates Committee doesn't know that it's responsible for doing that, or doesn't agree that it's responsible for doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of all of those things in a way. I'm not sure that the Estates Committee are aware and whether or not it is something that we do.
It would be interesting to look at the asset register and determine which are actually estates matters. So, is a courthouse still there? That's an estate matter. Are the rooms still there? Maybe that's an estate matter. But have we got the right number of chairs in the meeting rooms? It's not really estates, that's almost operation. So who should it be the Estates Committee that inspects? Should it be the maintenance team that inspects? Should it be the council staff who inspect, would that be derogation of our duties as councillors to make sure that it's okay?
And to say, as long as there's clarity on the responsibilities, I'm not overly bothered. It's just, to me, it's still a bit ambivalent, that's all.
Any thoughts on what we should do in that? Energy, have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm the person that does most of that. So obviously if there's something, or the estates officer, so between us. But then I suppose the estates committee does carry out an annual inspection of all of our assets, and then reports back on their findings through the estates committee. So you could say that that happens there as well. I mean, it's obviously, and we've obviously got the finance committee in there as well. So reviewing what's spent on assets and the insurance. So you're almost saying that everybody's in.
Everyone's got a right.
Yeah.
Would it be, say, everyone's fault, but does anyone take responsibility? How would it be if we said in there that the clerk and estates officer are primarily responsible for checking the asset register, the estates committee is responsible for cyber checking the register, the finance committee is only involved from an insurance point of view, but that could come in the second line, risk or damage to third party property.
Yeah, to some extent, I think it's also getting into what's an operational issue and what's
Yeah,
Well, so going back to the rent, I think it's actually phrased as best it can, actually. And I think what's happened is that we've just lost sight of the fact that we are responsible for doing it. Because the reg would say that it is, whilst the officers day-to-day manage the asset register, once a year, it is the responsibility of the members to actually go and verify that activity. And that, you know, absolutely not suggesting that it would ever happen, that there aren't assets that have been acquired that have disappeared or vice versa.
it's that derogation of duty.
Yes. So, and I think because as we're saying, a lot of the asset register does relate to estates.
Yeah.
I think it makes no sense to say estates would do some of it, but not all of it. So, and taking your point about, do we really want to be going around counting chairs? Well, that comes back to having a sensible criteria for putting something on the asset register.
Yeah.
So we're obviously not going to put everybody's pens, pencils, whatever. But I think it is appropriate that we do go around once a year and just check that £10,000 worth of computer equipment can all be found. And so I think that is probably an estate's task. It doesn't need the whole of estates. Whether it's combined with the walk around or is separate to, don't have an opinion, but I think it is appropriate for estates. And I think it is appropriate for finance. Because the other
If
thing
the
is,
understanding is that it's incorporated, sorry.
so the other point was around the insurance, which again, the members are responsible on an annual basis for signing off on does the insurance meet the requirements, which is why we have to sign it off. But it's then putting that back to the asset register and going, we've got all these assets. Are all of these assets actually in the insurance?
Yeah.
So I think that is a finance.
No, the clarity definitely helps my thinking. And maybe we maybe just need to reword estate committee inspects to expand estates committee inspects as part of their annual inspection of the estate. I know that sounds maybe overly pedantic, but it just makes it clear that we're wrapping those things up together.
But it doesn't mean that you have to, and that you can't then go, oh, well, we just want to do a quick walk around and we'll come back and verify things at another time. So if you want to be prescriptive of how you're doing it, then yes. But if you want to have the flexibility to do it how you want to do it,
In which case, then you've convinced me.
I think I prefer to keep flexibility.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be the same annually anyway, so.
Yeah. Right.
So Ian, you raised that as an issue where we ended up, which is the status quo, but recognition by states.
Yeah.
That is something that needs to happen and be noted against the asset register, which I suspect hasn't been happening in the past.
Yeah, I think the 3.7 was a bit different.
Yeah.
The annual maintenance inspection, that sounds a bit more technical.
Yeah.
Than counting chairs or courthouses or whatever. And I'm not quite sure what it's saying to do. If it's annual maintenance inspection by independent contractors of everything, but making sure that we get someone in to check that the hour works and the normal hour works, that seems arduous and horrible.
And expensive.
Yeah.
I guess, back to your point, Emma, this is more to make sure that we're maintaining the equipment so we don't end up with big bills later on. So, is there a definition that we can put in there that does already seamless, but equally gives some sense of which assets should be inspected annually? Any thoughts from you, Terry?
The one thing that's not been mentioned is buildings. I don't know what happens. You know, I've put forward previously that there should be a survey of each of the buildings by a RICS type organisation. They will then come back to us and say, this needs doing now, this needs doing soon, and that would be nice to do, but you know, if it took 3 years, not the end of the world. And that way you will know that the Joe Frog Centre would need this, this and this over a 5-year period. And to put it in the budget, say, okay, that's all coming up, that needs to be done the year after. You know, we'll see how things go. I'm not sure if that's covered in there.
I'm not sure that is. Yes,
Not so.
We've got assets, but that's quite a broad church. Go down to 3.7 again, please. Do we need to add in, what do people think to us adding in, perhaps in the maintenance protocol or something else, to be determined regular review of our buildings to get some sense of, you know, to your point, Mike, where are we? I thought there's nothing specifically in there for, so maybe under 3.3, you know, it's a separate thing under 3.3, which is almost a copy of the first bit, but it's, I'm not going to argue not an annual inspection of buildings, but really a biannual or triannual inspection of buildings by an RICS surveyor along the lines of 3.3, what we call it 3.3.
So you want me to call it buildings?
I'm not sure yet, and I'm just positing it for discussion. I think you're right to say that that's something you would welcome. Great, okay, Max.
I think it does relate to my previous point. I think there's a confusion between the annual inspection that the estate does of its buildings and what is now the assets register, which has come in independently of that.
So how about this? So if 3.3 said estates committee verified, which is what the regs term is, so under 3.3, the whole point is going around and actually just seeing that it's there. I'm not saying that it's fit for purpose or anything, it's just saying it's still here.
So
So
change
that's-
inspects to verify, okay.
And I think part of our difficulty with the document as it stands is 3.3 assets is a classification of stuff, and 3.7 maintenance is a thing that you do with it.
Yes.
So yes, we could move all the maintenance up. If it's maintenance of assets, we could put the maintenance of assets in the asset section, or do we put maintenance in a maintenance section? So I think if we kept assets as predominantly relating to the asset register, I think is my sense of it. And then the maintenance section, I think we need to be clear about Mike's point, the regular periodic inspection of, how do we ignore things like major assets? Is that a term that would work for people?
I think that's
Things
the
like that?
problem that I'm still struggling with, because essentially what we're primarily talking about is bricks and mortar.
Well, but it's also the vans, and the mowers,
Yeah.
the seats,
Mhm.
because
now that we know that we're responsible for all seats, we do need to be looking at them on a periodic basis, going, this isn't going to impale somebody when they try and sit on it.
What I'm going to do is suggest that Charity Bright Committee is the worst. We've got a sense, I hope, around the table, those particular issues around inspecting buildings, inspecting major assets, maybe assets costing over a certain amount. We've got a need to make it the States Committee verifies. So the suggestion, rather than, unless there's a need, rather than debate the whole thing now, perhaps you and I, or you and James, or you and Max, I don't think need four of us, sits down and has a look at that and looks at rewording it to take
Yeah.
account of everything we said, let's not do it now. Do we need to, is there a regulatory requirement for this to be approved by full council next week?
It needs to be approved before the end of March. Yeah.
So how would people feel if we said, okay, let's review it separately? You can choose your plan. Which one does you want to work with you on that? And we don't have another FGP, do we?
No. So it would just have to go to full council.
Yeah, we just have to go to full council, but maybe if you and one of us, your choice, drafts something, sends it around and we get approval by email. Does that make sense? I'm trying to do it now.
Certainly agree with not doing it now.
Are you happy with that one?
Mhm.
Thank you. 253503, to review the internal control policy. Any questions on the internal control policy? Any thoughts on the internal control policy?
Well, there's a related issue, of course, because if you look under 9, it specifically talks about an asset register. Then if you go to 11, it talks about property. So we're making a clear distinction here that is not, to my mind, as clear in the previous document.
The previous document is a risk assessment. I wonder if the wording we've got there will help us draft risk assessment, because risk assessment is just saying we're managing the risk without saying what we're responsible for. So you could almost use that as our template to go back to the wording on the previous document. Any other comments or thoughts on internal controls? No. Wonderful. So we're happy to recommend this to council next week. Wonderful. Thank you. Next one, 3505, to consider the reviewed asset register and agree the figures to be used for the OTC buildings. Interesting.
Oh, hang on, I think we're one missing.
This again?
We've got the internal control policy and then the internal audit review checklist.
I've gone too far. No, you're absolutely right. Internal audit review checklist. Comments on this? So we'll be happy to recommend this to full council. Perfect, thank you. Now let's look at the asset register and bring things to you for OTC buildings. And you and James have worked hard on this. So perhaps I would just ask you for your comments on the asset register and your thoughts as to how you move forward. James, do you want to go first?
So, thank you for the recognition. It's still a work in progress. The specific point for today is, over time, the council has used a number of methodologies for valuing its property assets, which form the greatest part of the ultimate number that we report on an annual basis. We have, in previous full council meetings or FNGP meetings, we agreed a revised valuation policy that said we are going to record assets at their acquisition cost. And I suppose this is the ultimate outworking of that, where we just want to be certain that when we come back with a final asset register that has a very, very different number on it, people aren't going to be more surprised rather than shocked.
Yeah.
So we currently carrying the Fletton House at 7-figure valuation. We actually acquired it for £1. So under our revised valuation policy, that should change to £1. And I think we just want to be sure that everybody's happy that that happens.
One question, which is, if we subsequently invest significantly in the asset that we bought for £1, like Fletton House, we spent a lot of money on Fletton House, does that affect the evaluation? It's just from a simple bookkeeping point of view, if you're spending on a capital asset, the capital asset not only can really see any cost.
It's a grey area because we are not keeping business ongoing valuations of these items. It should go on once and effectively not change. So the base answer is no. But many people have gone, but we've just spent £2 million on this. Blah blah blah. But to help you understand why the answer might be no, we wouldn't change it, we refurbed downstairs to put the hub in, so that's got a kitchen and whatever. Should that be reflected? We've just got some solar panels on the roof. Do we have to revalue it for that? Because that was a not insignificant amount of investment. But fundamentally, the building, if you sold Fletton House, you'd just be selling a large office block, either with or without a kitchen, or with or without some solar panels. Nobody would be going, oh, that's a fundamentally different thing because it's now got this.
No, I know, but also, even though it's outside of council lands, if you're investing in property, you would have the property, if your business should have the property, value in 3 or 5 years, depending on the tenants pay or M&A large cosmetics or your shareholders agreements will happen. Are we saying that as far as councils are concerned, value to the purchase price and that's it? Is that, if they're the rules,
Yeah.
then they're the rules. But we don't need to debate, do we? We just those are the rules. So what the council will need is an explanation like that,
Yeah.
simple as possible, because we're going to see different assets. How will that affect us, though, if we see a reduction in our assets? Will we see a corresponding reduction in our liabilities, or is that not how it works in council?
No.
The asset register is simply a list of things that we have.
Accounting grades at work.
Yeah.
However,
Because there is no shareholder value. So in a business, writing off the value of something is a disastrous thing because you're essentially writing down shareholder value. There is no shareholder value section in our accounting.
no, it's still done in our bookkeeping.
Not for the asset. Asset value does not. Well, the only bookkeeping that we keep is our essentially the cash accounting. So it's our reserves that we're carrying forward, and our OPEX and CAPEX and income and expenditure and cash flow. So you have a cash sheet, but the asset register is simply a list of things, what we have, and the value ascribed to it.
The buildings are on the accounts. We do have a sheet of paper. What do we call it? On the profit loss, the balance sheet.
Balance sheet.
They're all balance sheet at the moment at whatever figures. Yeah, more than £1. Not saying it's in the world. I'm just saying that will change as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that has changed in the past, and what Paul does, he puts through it.
So that would need to change, but as long as the asset register says Fletton House is going to need 100 grand spent on it next year, or 200,000 over the next 5 years. In other words, you've got to account somewhere for, otherwise you're not going to have this thing here is not going to give us the right amount of money to spend in the future.
I think we talk about different things.
Yeah. Okay, so you count that differently.
Yeah, so the estate's 5-year expenditure plan would have the amounts in, and you know, frankly, even if we'd only spent £1 on something, it doesn't mean that its maintenance cost over the next 10 years is only going to be £1. Yeah.
So we'll get that number.
Well, we have the estate's management plan, which has gone into the accrual plan, which has gone into the budget.
What I'm going to do is, you might notice the hospital, he's got to come to one, she's got to come to then move on to the rest of the asset register discussion, but this will give you a flavour of the questions you'll get from. So a simple explanation at the beginning will be really quite helpful. Max, you want to-
No, I'm basically agreeing with James in that the asset register is just an asset register. It's got nothing to do with our accounts per se.
No,
And I think we're conflating the two things.
although we have it accounted here, we're not having it accounted in the balance sheet. Well, you comfortable with all the discussions, and you'll be able to do all the community magic.
Yes. 15 years ago, certain councillors wanted to put Truro 1.8 million for here because we spent a lot of money. And if you agree it's a pound now, as it should have been then, it's a pound.
So you're entirely comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's really comforting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the courthouse going in as £1 as well. My only concern is some of the other, and I think I have found that the Jones Strong was £1, but I'm just not sure about Occupation Road, and I need to look a bit more at the car park.
Not sure.
Well, because the documentation that we've got isn't very clear.
But it's the acquisition cost that comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
No one comment James made earlier, which is if you're not sure.
Yeah, so we then have a choice of, do we section out the asset register a little bit and go, we have revalued these because we're now certain that these values are the correct ones, and say, but as with all asset registers, this is a working process. We're not sure about these, we're leaving them alone. Or there is an entry in the regulations that says what you can do is, if you don't know, again, put it in for £1. So, and again, all we would do then is, if we subsequently found that it wasn't £1 and we could prove it, we would change it to a different value. So it's, do we wipe all the values out unless we can prove otherwise now and then potentially add value later, or do we leave some of them in at their current value and wipe out that value in a subsequent year once we can prove or disprove something?
My instinctive reaction is I'd rather have the labels.
Or
do it.
Or do we leave it all alone until we can do the whole thing? Perhaps we should have left it with that, given that's probably the two questions.
No, you just said that.
What was it?
So, well, my instinct is still the same. I'd rather have this two labels rather than have it.
Mm.
So to me, the question before us is, do we change all into £1 and then readjust later if we need to around the second rate? Or do we leave them alone? Or do we leave them alone, and when we know, then do the change then? Max?
I think we probably do leave them alone, but in moving forward, and again, it goes back to a previous point I've made, it may be that we need to have a property register and an asset register which is different,
Yes,
because they're trying to do
Oh, I
different
like
things.
that.
and
I like that.
if you look at the full list of documents that it's good for a council to have under the gold council scheme, there is exactly that.
Mhm.
How likely is it to be practical to ask for that to be split between the property register and an asset register? So you've basically got two separate tabs in the same spreadsheet. So when you bring it back to council next week, they'll say, we've got these two, And that's how they are, and that's how they're staying, unless and until such time as we change them. But I wouldn't go into the explanation of pound costing, people have the debate, and everybody wants to have the debate until we're ready to have it in its entirety.
No, so it's not splitting the asset register into two things. Asset register is always one thing with sort of
Which is-
building assets and
Which is
non-building
what I've
assets.
got.
And the property register is like, there's a separate, much more detailed document that says, this is what this asset is, that's just listed as one little line. And this is what we do here, all sorts of.
Who would create that property register? Would that be you, Ellen, or would that be a
It's got to partly come out of Mike's review, I think.
It can't be done until Mike's finished, but after Mike's review, we need to properly register. Will that be something Lisa does or something the Estates does?
Probably a bit of both, a bit of me, a bit of Lisa, a bit of estates. Full council to have a look at it. It's,
So maybe what we do then is we take this to the full council next week, as it is, get everyone and we review the property register issue once, which may be next month, this month anyway, but certainly by March, we'll have some sense of what we might be doing. Then we can go property register.
so you're saying that we leave this asset register as is
That's my
for this year?
recommendation. If others are happy with that.
So I had something slightly different. You're saying leave it alone in its entirety based on the words that you use there. I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm going to leave the property section valuations alone, but continue
Well, yeah, right, okay, yeah.
winnowing out the rest of it as much as we can.
But you're not going to do that before next week. In
There's
the
2
real-
days before we need to publish this at the next time.
In the real world, if you want to change it, then change it. But in the real world, saying that's going to go forward to council.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, technically we've got another month as well, if not.
Would you prefer to leave it until March?
I would propose it goes as is next week, everybody is seeing what's going ahead. And then it's an ongoing, Jamie will say at that meeting, it's an ongoing thing, it's not going to change because of, that's the nature of it.
The only reason not to, or the reason not to, is depending on the outcome of the review that Goldsmiths are doing. But whether that will make a difference before this year.
I'm pretty sure it won't make a difference. We're only talking about the buildings. So the only thing that's going to do possibly is, in the short term, is come around to saying that those figures will go down to £1 or some other figure.
Mm.
I wouldn't confuse that one with it. It's a big
So,
one.
if we're going to put that forward to council next week, this is the current situation, and as with any fixed asset register, it will change as we learn more. Good. The internal control check,
Sorry, the thanks are from all of the three, to James and Anne for doing this. It's
Yeah,
a big task, and it's,
that's
to get it all on, future.
Agree, 100%. 253506, to review, to receive the internal control checklist. So I'm not seeing a lot of debate on this, we're just being asked to receive it. There are no things in there which warrant any further debate in my view. So we're happy to receive it, excellent. 253507, to confirm the budget spent following precept increase in recommended final budget amendments to full council. This is born out of the fact that although the December Finance and General Purposes Committee agreed the precept recommendation to full council changed that precept amount by an additional £5,000. We didn't record that that was, or we didn't formally record that that £5,000 was going to community grants. I can't go to, it was community grants. It was community grants. So I think all I'm asking council to do is 2 things. One, to confirm that that additional £5,000 should go to community grants. So community grants, that second line there goes up from 15. We should go scroll down the page and keep going.
Yes, done.
That's that one.
Yeah.
The community grants thing is at 20,000, not 15,000. The other thing I'm asking you to do is recognise that, if you scroll down a little bit further down, please, I have put still FH marketing, I'm going to change that just to marketing. I've added all the stuff that I said in December, proposed in December, which seemed to be accepted, that marketing goes onto one line rather than get spread across different budget lines. So I don't see any debate here because the only change from the proposal in December is an additional £5,000 to go to the community grants. So unless anybody has any questions, I hope we can take that proposal to council next week. You're saying you've got a
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. I saw it that we've got 5,000 in the arts fund and 20 in the community. Was that correct? Was that what was
No.
discussed
Yeah.
at December?
So, the one on the left is the original proposal to financing events to full council.
Hmm.
That was one that came out of the work I quoted. I changed it in the right hand. Stay there, where it says amended proposal to clarify the marketing spend. That's what I changed and sent to the December council finance and general purposes committee. That was a proposal I made to the finance and general purposes committee within the marketing, within the overall precept of £587,000. That seemed to have been accepted. There's nothing in the notes that says it wasn't. The notes say the precept that included that number was accepted and went to December council. Full council. Full council.
Yeah.
Full council. The only change since then is in line on the right hand side. The second line down was 15 in the December full council proposal. James proposed that increase to 20.
Mhm.
So if you look down at the next, that one, it's increased from 15 to 20.
Right.
So that's the only change, except I've now clarified where I've originally put this much, this line should be marketing, that line should be marketing, that line should be marketing, that line should be marketing. I put them all together in one line for marketing. So for example, the hub promotions originally was, or last year was £3,000, I'm saying it's nil because I'm increasing marketing. If you look up at recruitment, publicity and advertising, it was 4,000, I put it to nil because I put that 4,000 and so on.
There were four lines, John.
There were four lines.
There were four lines, which some of those lines were marketing, some weren't. There was other things in there as well. I can't remember exactly what they were, which will come with Michael later on about this budget thing. But there were four different areas. They weren't all marketing, but marketing appeared in all of those four things.
Yeah.
And the marketing budget that was approved is the number that's there, 26,000. And it's basically been made up of
all of the
half of those
right,
four
okay.
lines. If you want to go through them all sometime.
Yeah.
We went through it 4 different meetings.
Yes, we did. So some of it's been taken from other budgets, some of it's clarifying that things like the home promotion is part of the whole marketing thing, and some of it's just an increase in the budget for discretionary spend.
Mhm.
So all I'm asking is, or all that's in there in terms of increased spend, you scroll down to the bottom of this particular matrix, you'll see a figure there, discretionary spend, now 107,500
702.5.
instead of 102,000.
So the 5,000 that everybody approved for a few weeks ago. And just one other thing, John, just to clarify that, all the bits and pieces, we also took out the lift from, I don't know what you want to call it, committee spend budget back into reserves.
Yeah.
I still don't understand that because I said we're not going to put it in reserves, but if we need to spend it, we'll take it out of reserves, which is just madness to me. But we're not going to go into that today because all I'm asking for is for Finance and General Purposes Committee to agree that your special spend is not 102,500, it's 107,500, and we're adding it to the community grant budget. So that's my proposal. Does anybody have any questions before I make that proposal? You're still looking confused.
Yeah, because you've got two different totals at the bottom there, and I'm just,
If you look at there's one total, 107,500.
Yeah.
The line across is last year's spend.
oh, right, okay, yeah, yeah.
And the line across
Yeah.
from that is a differential. So if you had 27,000.
So that's just year against year. So right, yeah.
So the only figure you need to look at is 107,500, which is 5,000 more than 102,500 in December, because a proposal was put forward to say, let's spend 5,000, which is what is agreed, James.
Can I just ask Paul to confirm that that total spend matches to the total spend on which the preceptor was requested?
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Summary. Which figure you after?
It ought to, because 102,500 was agreed, we increased it by 5 in the precept request, and we put 5 in the budget. So I've been somewhat taken around it to work the same.
5,2,761.
And that includes the additional 5,000 for community grants.
Yeah, that did, yeah.
Where's the additional
Well, there'll be
5,000?
the breakdown further over.
Do you want the sum totals or the individuals?
Individual totals. And shows the community grant,
So showing the
community grant line.
Yeah, because that's where the change was, wasn't it?
Yeah, community support now 20,000. Yeah. Can you go and scroll down, please, to the house marketing?
Yeah, but you've got, because that's where I got confused, because arts is 5,000 there, but then on yours,
It should be 3.
but that,
17.
Because, right, if you go back to the version sent,
The hope is down here is 3,000.
yeah, if you go back to the proposal I put forward, that if you just scroll up to for this one, the one that's there, just stay down. The figures you've got, actually, so go up to the matrix above. Matrix on the right hand side. Those are the figures. It's the left hand side. So the left hand side figures are the ones you have in your budget.
yeah.
And you've changed 15 to 24. But what hasn't happened here, I believe, is that the marketing hasn't been pulled together because it's still in those pieces.
Yeah.
Because okay, if we give Paul long enough, he could probably work it all out. But we just said
Yeah.
we know it's all over the place there. But John's got the summary. But the numbers add up the same.
The numbers add up because in the matrices I've shown in that proposal, the first matrices has taken the figures that Paul added into it. The second matrix are the figures that I've adjusted, but they come to the same amount. So if you scroll down to the bottom of those, right? Stop.
Yeah.
If you look at the figure on the left, the total of 102,500, right?
Yeah.
Those include the budget numbers you have got in your budget right now. Go across to the matrix on the right, that 102,000 is the same number.
Yeah.
But what has happened is this was proposed in December and I got agreed in December.
Yeah.
I have amended each one of those lines, so the total still makes 102,500. What you haven't done, and this is not a blame thing, this is just an acknowledgement thing, what you haven't done is changed your budget to match those numbers.
I'll do that.
What I'm asking
So
for-
that for everyone.
what I'm asking you to do, now that the additional £5,000 has been agreed and it's going into community grants, if you scroll down to the next matrix, that one, what I would like you to do, assuming council agree next week, is change your budget numbers to match those budget numbers in yellow, so that the precept is exactly the same.
Yes.
But the line items now change to those line items, not the line items you've got in the budget. Does that make sense?
But I'm not quite sure why council need to agree this again, because that was what was agreed in December.
We don't kind of agree.
If you,
We have agreed.
It's the way the figures are presented.
I'll tell you why, because if you scroll right at the very beginning of this matrix, this proposal, the paragraph, second paragraph, is not fully approved. Third paragraph, December council agreed discussion on the individual budget line items to be amended should be deferred to the next FGP meeting in February 2026. That's what we're doing. Now, if the meeting here feels it doesn't need to go to council, fab, I don't have to go through this again.
Well, it's just clarifying, it's the same numbers.
I know.
And because it's in 4 different line items and 4 budgets, because that's where we've always done it. All you've done here is try to explain to us for some, I don't really know quite how we're even talking about it now, but
You know, it's only because there's a confusion.
I've still got confusion.
Right, we'll come back to you in a second, James.
So I believe that the numbers on the left in John's first matrix were the original thing. They were amended by him to move some line items around, which went to December F&GP, which Max ably got through a vote, and it was agreed at F&GP. What I believe didn't happen was that those revisions were not fed back to Paul, so they have been agreed but not reflected in the existing working document. And then at full council, I set my hand up and got an extra £5,000 thrown in, which is reflected in there. So that's all cool. So actually, I think we're talking about a documentation mismatch to what has been agreed. I would agree with Mike that full council has delegated any correction of that.
Wonderful. In that case,
So you don't actually need to do anything.
Okay. Well, I was just concerned about at one minute I'm looking at 5,000 in the community arts fund, and then I'm looking at 3. Now I am still a little bit sure about that, because as you will see tonight, we've got a fair few coming out. So you've knocked out 2,000 when every year we spend near enough 5. Or 4,000 some odd. So somebody out of who comes along every year is going to have to get a no.
but also the budget's been put up from 50 to 20. and
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
that's
sure-
community grants. That's not arts.
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
So I was taking Emily's point, but I think to work through the process, John is absolutely right that the current numbers that we're working from just need to be corrected.
Yeah,
to
that's
what we
fine.
have
That's
agreed.
fine. Yeah.
And the members accept that in making future decisions, that's the budget we are working from. But, you know, and if we need to start moving budgets around or taking from reserves, these are all processes that
That
we
we
know
can, yeah,
exist.
that's fine.
So we're not going to take this to council because the theme of this meeting
Yes.
is very quiet. We don't know who's on this.
I wasn't at the meeting in December, so I think it's what you said. One question, tourism, under one of the 57 matrices that are up there, does that cover the town lights?
Mhm.
Yes, yeah, that's all I worry about.
There's a whole bunch of things we can do. I mean, number one, renaming under those lines because they're not.
You have told me you put them up.
Sorry?
Pleasure.
He wasn't at the meeting with the pictures.
Remember that?
Yes. You don't come to meetings to be surprised.
Actually, now,
I'm going to call this forward. because-
hang on a minute. No, you can't, because this is now being approved here, but full council has not approved the budget. So in your December meeting, you didn't approve the budget. You just talked about the precept. So at the moment, this full council has not approved its budget, and
So we do.
for our auditors, it needs to. The line on the min, I didn't notice it until, well, when did I raise it with you? Yeah.
So it does need to go to full council as a full budget.
Mm.
Well, I was at the meeting,
Sorry?
I was at the meeting, I've been at all of the meetings, and as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't, the full budget was approved.
It's not in the minutes.
It's not in the minutes. There's no vote on it.
It's not in the minutes. I'm with you. I thought it had been, but it's not in the minutes. So therefore, the auditors were right to say we haven't approved it. So we will agree it next week.
But all we have to do is not explain what.
No, literally just get them to.
Put
Yeah.
forward the revised thing from Paul and say, that's the budget you didn't agree before, we now agree.
Because this is a preset. So Paul, will you have time in the next couple of days, please, to amend your budget to match these metrics? And you'll notice that I've only added in a few because also operational expenditure, it's not up to the councils to determine. Because that's the cost. If it's repairs and maintenance, it's if it's reserves, that goes to the council. If it's discretionary spending, that goes to the council.
Do you need this by tomorrow?
No, well, Thursday lunchtime, Michelle. But yeah, but it's just a case of just making sure we do that. Yeah.
So I thought I'd escape it. We haven't. I'm going to move on now. Further comments on 07 to 253508 to receive the space.
So just to understand, when you say we have to agree things by December, is it only the precept we have to agree? not the budget?
No, ideally, I mean, this has never happened in my whole clerking career that the precept was agreed and approved, but the budget wasn't.
It's a meeting management. You can't.
It was just a bit of an oversight.
Unless you agree the budget, the precept based. But the agreed precept didn't agree the budget. So formally, we have to agree.
Yeah, and they have to be agreed in two separate lines.
So whether that was a lack of sharing it, whether that was a lack of recording it, whether it was a lack of awareness, whatever it was.
I think there was a lot of talk, I think, around the precept, which then overtook.
So all of it is.
Yeah.
So whatever the reason, it's not been fully agreed. People will agree next week. The board can change those numbers. We just present it. So we pretty much agree with this, but we have before any questions. Can I now move on to the next item? Any other questions or queries or confusions or comments or revolutions? 253508 to receive and discuss the proposed reserves policy, reserve policy for review to recommend it to the council. In time for the OTC annual meeting, it's not the annual town meeting, it's the annual meeting in May. So we don't have to put forward in February, March or April, but it would be nice to put forward as soon as we've got it agreed. So James, do you want to give a succinct overview of reserve policy? Because I would assume that everyone's recommending.
What a lovely thought. So essentially, it's
Why
just,
would you? I'm just going to get answers. I know it's.
it's simply formalising what we both have been doing or have done, and what we recognising why we do that, which is essentially that that's what we should do. It's best practice. So it defines what reserves are, and the two main types, with capital reserve being a subset, and then identifies targets, or a large council such as us should aim to not be holding more than 3 months of operational expenses, and indeed looking around at multiple comparators. Sandford Town Council, for example, holds a reserve, general reserve of only just over £200,000 on a budget of best part of £1 million. So quite similar to us. Because fundamentally, we have no right to tax the electorate just to sit on the cash. And that's what a general reserve is. It's an undefined reserve for undefined reasons and undefined purpose. But there is no limit on the amount of money we can raise for future use where we are specific about what that use is. And that's why, as part of the asset register review, we then had an accruals review that essentially says if we've spent £100,000 on play equipment, and if we did that next year and we knew that that was going to have a life from the manufacturer of 25 years, and we didn't after 25 years want to either suddenly put the precept up by £100,000 or take the play equipment away and say, sorry kids, that's gone. A sensible planning option would be to save up for that over the intervening period. And so by having an asset register where you know how much you spent on something, make an estimate of how much you would need to spend if you're going to replace it, and you can make at that point, the point you acquire it, you make a decision about, are we going to replace it or is this a one-off? Then you can start actually putting money aside for it in what's called an earmarked reserve, and you can say, in 2040, we expect to spend £100,000 replacing this thing, or in 2050, if we actually want to provide this new service and we want to build this new building for it, that's going to be £1 million, and you save up for it. And it's just sat in your reserves, specifically earmarked, and the town can see that's why you're sitting on some cash. And that's all that says.
So when it comes to things like the annual town meeting, for example, you can show we've got this much in general reserves, this much in earmarked reserves, to demonstrate to the ratepayers generally that we have got a policy which allows us to replace assets in the future without unduly increasing the precept at any specific point. And it's prudent to accrue the long-term replacement of fixed and other assets. So it's a good paper. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the paper? Max, thank you.
I agree it's a good paper, and I agree that we need to realistically sort out the difference between general reserves and earmarked reserves. For the moment, they're all effectively general reserves, and we need to resolve that conundrum. But my question is under operation, where it says in the first sentence, this policy will be reviewed and adopted each year at the annual meeting of the town council. It may be the case that that's exactly what has to happen, but I was wondering whether or not it should be reviewed and adopted by full council every year. Who's making this decision at the annual town council?
So it's as John alluded to, it's not the annual town meeting, it's the annual meeting of the town council, which is where we elect the mayor.
I missed it. Sorry.
So just so we
Which is absolutely fine.
That's right, the bit, Max Driver, I'm not really cancelling. But it's us,
Yeah,
the council agrees it.
that was my mystery.
Right, okay, good. Ian.
If you have an earmarked reserve,
Yeah.
and then after 5 years of saving,
Yeah.
you change your mind,
Yeah.
what?
you take the vote to either, so depends what you're doing. So if you decide you're not doing that project at all anymore, you have to release that fund. You can't just go, oh, we'll save it. You have to release it. And assuming it's not capital receipt funds, in which case it has to be spent on assets. If you had saved it up, then you would release it for the following year, and your precept requirement would go down by the release.
Does that need to be reflected in the policy? Because that's something we were being accused of in the past, isn't it? Holding the funds, stuff.
Or
By libraries.
you can get accused of holding funds for things if you're not being very clear about what those things are. Whereas if we have an earmarked reserve, so I would expect at the end of this year, next year,
when we have budgeted next year for £30,000 worth of accruals, they were all earmarked reserves. So you were questioning why are we taxing the electorate more than we are going to spend next year? It's because we are implementing this policy of starting to save for things for future years.
Here we ask a different question, which is if we've got too much money in reserves because we're not doing the project, what happens to it? And what happens to it is what we put down in the finally the penultimate paragraph. Earmark reserves, blah, 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 appropriate action will take to accrue or release funds for the following financial year. So if you've got too much money there because you're not going for the proposal, you have said we will release. Appropriate action will take into accrue or release funds for the following financial year. So if we say that £100,000 project that James has alluded to, if in year whatever it is we've got £50,000, we say, well, actually, we're not going to do that anymore. That £50,000 has to be released as earmarked funds. It will go back into general reserves, which we then say there's too much in general reserves. We don't need to increase the preset that much next year. We might decide, rather than say we're putting £50,000 in next year, so we're going to reduce the preset by £50,000 again, we might decide to release those funds into the preset over a number of years to smooth out. Because smooth this stuff out. So we have to release funds, we want to smooth out. But right now, that's too much detail in my view. I think you've got your concern, quite correct concern actually, incorporated in that.
Okay, but it doesn't say where it is, the funds to, should it say released to general reserve, or is that?
No, but it's released to wherever the elected members of that year choose to do it. Because in cancelling one project, they may decide that there's another good project that they want to start, and wouldn't it be lovely if they could start it with a whole little nest egg? But again, they have to be clear that this amount that had been agreed for that is no longer applicable, and that this new project is starting and that it has been transferred. And by being absolutely clear about that, the town, when we publish our annual accounts, which say this is where all the reserves are, can say, actually, yes or no. And we can listen or not.
And I think the idea is if it's too prescriptive, it binds future councils too much. And I think simply saying we don't have to accrue or release funds depending on the state of play at that time allows us that flexibility. But it does, as you quite rightly say, acknowledge that we've got too much money there. We can't just.
It also protects the current council that's had that idea that they're going to spend that money and raise those reserves. Because if say a whole new council came in and decided that, oh no, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that, we'll just take the money. They've got to show to the people of the town why they're doing it and what they've done.
That's a good observation. Any other questions or comments? You make that a formal proposal?
I am proposing that the council adopts this policy, or that the FNGP recommends that the council adopt this policy.
So does that have to be a formal proposal like it does, is it?
That's the end. You can second it.
Okay.
Somebody can.
Seconded. All those in favour? Wonderful. Thank you very much. James, thank you for what you've done on that. Let's go back to the agenda. To consider reviewing the OTC budget to see if it can be simplified. Mike, this is you.
Well, I think like sort of you mentioned budgets quite a lot. I've been to 3 FNGP meetings down the road that it's come up, and there'll be a third full council meeting next week, which will then finally approve this budget. And there's been a huge amount of questions about it. Now, I know it's not easy to move from where we've been to somewhere else. However, I think, and I'm not suggesting do it for the existing budget, by the way, but at some time in the near future, we actually look at the way we put together our budget and have a simplified version of it. For example, I sent it round, hopefully you all managed to read it. This is the one from Trapston. And there's, you know, a page there of expenditure.
Yeah.
There's another page there of income, and then there's a thing at the bottom here talking about candies, all those sorts of things. So based on, you know, 2.5 sheets of paper, for the average punter, or maybe the average council member, that is enough. Now, if we had something like that, we have got something a bit like it, but, you know, not quite in the same vein, I don't think. We could say, okay, I will go about the photocopier because I'm a, you know, photocopier addict. Could you show me all the documents about photocopiers? And then you'll just go and pull out all the bits that make up that line. So all I'm suggesting is that we think about, we've got another bit to go for the next FNGP, maybe start it, and there's a lot of other things going on, you know, Emma's looking for, yeah, you know what I mean, there's a lot going on.
There are kind of reasons why.
Okay,
We're not going to do it right now.
okay, yeah, I'm not suggesting do it right now, but this here at Thrapston, which is a similar size town to us, sort of showing the way. Uppingham's exactly the same as this, and Stamford, they've got a beautiful thing, which, if you want to see it, I can send you a copy of it, which makes it crystal clear about where they're spending money, why they're raising money, what the reserves are, and all the rest of it. So I think if you go on the internet as a ratepayer and put in Uppingham precept, Uppingham budget, Thrapston budget, it comes up straight away as this. If you put it in for Albion, it doesn't, and then you have to go onto the Albion Town website, then you have to look at all the different documents that are there, and they're not really in a very easy to see order. So we're a bit of an outlier when it comes to information for people looking. So that's why I'm raising it, and hopefully if we do it like this or present it like this next time, it might just make the whole process smoother.
So this is more of a document that you want on the website for members of the public to look at.
Well, certainly it should go on the website for members of the public to look at.
Mm.
As a councillor, generally, unless I have some concern, if you gave me this as a budget and said, I'm going from this to this, and I look at that and go, precept rise 4%, projects, yeah, that's all fine. You know, I'll look at that fund and say, yeah, it's fine. What I don't have to do is spend hours and hours and hours wading through stuff, because, you know, that James might want to do that, but I might not want to. So that's the sort of choice.
Thank you, Mike, Max.
I basically agree. I think maybe the confusion is we're not actually really talking about simplifying the budget. The budget is the budget. It's really about the way in which we present it externally. And I completely agree that if we can find a, shall I say, more user-friendly way of presenting it externally, what we use internally is neither here nor there, not too, but you know what I mean. So I completely agree that when it comes to presenting the budget externally, whether it be on the website, whether it be at a town meeting, whether it be, you know, just something we can you know, give to the public, then I completely agree. Because I think in the end it will help us to justify what we're doing financially.
There are two things. One is, can the budget be slightly simplified? I think it can, because we have a number of redundant lines. Secondly, is there a way, as you were saying, of putting on websites in a simplified fashion so that those who cared can look? I think both of those are valid, and perhaps if they tweak it in, you can bring forward a proposal, Mike, and it might be good to have that in place for the next budget round, which will start in October this year. And that will give us time to look at our systems and our budget overall. So I think I'm just taking this as a place marker, but not a proposal or a discussion. I think what would be helpful is when we get to that stage, we can have all the things to go in the pack as opposed to later. Wonderful. No other questions on 25, 35, 09? Thank you. We move on to grant applications.
Um,
First,
Can I just recommend or maybe request, if you swap the order of O2 and O3, then I can stay for those two and then disappear.
Yes, I was going to do that because we've got different levels of people.
Did you have you declared an other interest or a pecuniary interest?
Well, obviously, one I'm directly conflicted on, but so as you know, I don't want to discuss it now. But the one from Creative Arnold isn't actually really from Creative Arnold; it's from the Culture Club, and
So
the
you've
Culture
got-
Club consists of the Festival of Music and Drama and the Fringe as well. So I think I ought to get.
I think it's a peculiar interest because it was standard interest. So I would take,
But I'll do whatever you ask me to do.
that's fine. I think you're right, Max. If you do 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, I think that's, you're saying you're leaving for 2, aren't you? No, you're at call 3.
So if we did 3 first, we could throw Mike out, then he can come back to the rest of it.
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah,
do
that's what I'm thinking.
bits for Max, and then you can.
Yeah. Then I'll,
So we'll do 3 first, 25, 36, 03 to consider the grant application.
I'm saying, yes, yeah. Well, we've changed places.
You know, Mike,
Okay.
Mike is being, this is 25, 36, 03 to consider the grant application from the Annual District Court Society. I don't have one of those here, unfortunately.
750.
£750, thank you. Any thoughts or comments or questions on this particular grant application? So, do you have it?
We've got the money in the pot.
It's just going to be thank you.
Well, as a newbie, can any of the pre-existing councillors give me any context about whether this is completely new to us, whether this is something we support every year?
We have supported it previously, definitely.
And if you look at the sheet that we've been sent on grants expenditure, that's got a historic list.
Yeah.
Of that. Of who we've granted in the past, going back for a million years.
I think it's quite well attended.
It's well attended, it's regular, it's been rejuvenated.
It brings a lot of people into it.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a wide range of young and old.
Mm.
Not really.
The questions I always ask are, number 1, is it good return? Number 2, are they making money? And number 3, if we don't give them this money, will they stop? And so for me, the Court Society, clearly bring people into it. Sorry, there's 4 questions, just a couple of patches. Do they bring people into Andor? Do they promote Andor as a cultural hub, as a company for town? Yes.
I think we're recognised as well on their brochure.
Brochure,
Yeah.
Do they have a need for money? And I always get stuck on this one with a couple of these with CXI, because they've got reserves of £6,500. Although without a grant, then that reserve would go down quicker than it's going down at the moment. If we didn't give the grant, would they carry on? I don't know. Obviously, I don't know them, but I think possibly only for a short period of time because they've got so many.
Just to answer James's question as well, one of the things we asked last year was the idea of encouraging younger people to go, and they specifically said that the tickets up, they reduce children, young versus doing it. So
I thought that, thank you.
there's a win for us.
Yeah, Max. So, Max.
Yeah. Again, I'd like a little bit more information. At one level, they're saying they've had income of 9 and a bit and their expenditures. They made nearly £3,000 last year. They've got a reserve of 6. Yet they also say that the cost of the project is 10,000. I don't kind of see how the figures add up a little bit. But I'd also like to know well, how many people actually go to these concerts? To what extent are we subsidising 20 people to go to a concert or 2,000? I absolutely have no idea. I'd like some idea of what the reach is of this. The other thing, and again, sorry, the other thing that just irritates me a little bit, as somebody who organises multiple events in this town, well, maybe they just need to cost them properly. You know, the ticket prices should reflect the cost of the concert.
How would you see that being fed back? Or does that affect your view on whether we should do it?
Well, what I want to know, they basically want £750. What I don't know is what that means in terms of increasing ticket price, because I have no idea how many people are buying tickets.
There's some pictures on their website that are showing lots of people
By
in
adding
the
£1
church.
on each ticket.
Well, we've got ticket sales of 2,700 at
Yeah.
£12 a time. So that says to me, you buy 2,700 by 12. That's 200 people.
That's average it, right?
Yeah.
From, so we can work it out.
So we've got about 200 people going, 250 people going.
They run 2 a year, I think, by the looks of things. One in March, one in December.
So that information isn't here.
And as a side question, is this for this budget year or next budget year?
It's be in this one, so if we give it today, it'll go out.
It'll be our will be granted this budget.
So it comes out of, we've got 20,000 in the budget, there's 13,
What we've spent, 13,000.
13 and a bit thousand. There's money in the budget.
I think Max's points are valid, but the other side of the coin is we have a very high precept, and there's a large number of cultural organisations in the town that benefit from that by us effectively subsidising them. Because we think they're a good thing, and that fits our strategic view. And that's why people are coming to Alnwick, it's why people visit Alnwick. So I think it's a small number at 750, and it's more done every year for the last few years, which is not a reason to go forward, but I don't see a reason not to go forward. Personally.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, James?
Just do some maths. If they're doing 3 concerts a year, if I've worked it out correctly, we're subsidising each person going by £10.
No. How many people are you thinking that go?
5 people attend.
Well, because they're selling 227 tickets, okay, divide that by 3, so their average attendance is 75. Well,
I think looking on their website, it's only 2 in Oundle, 2 concerts a year, one in March, one in December.
yeah, it doesn't say that here.
Right. So, I'm not hearing any new information related to this. I'm hearing a thought that we should continue to sponsor them, which I accept. I'm hearing a thought that we should be more robust and saying you should be more assertive on ticket pricing. James, you asked questions, but I haven't had an opinion.
No, I have listened to the debate. I am ready to cast my vote.
So before we cast a vote, we either simply propose to accept and grant this money, or Max, if you want to put a condition on that, we can debate that condition. So the proposal in front of us, and I think I'm doing this right, I don't know you'll correct me if I'm wrong. We have an application for grant of £750. Are you prepared to propose that we give that? So we have a proposal that we give that, or we make that grant. Do you, Max, want to add a condition to that proposal for us to debate, or are you happy to accept the proposal and give the second?
I'm not convinced by the application. It's a relatively small amount of money. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm happy to go with whatever you recommend, Chair.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any objection to the proposal, so I have a seconder. James, all those in favour? 1 for 3 in favour, 1 against, or the same?
I'll abstain, actually.
Okay, so that's passed.
So Heidi can come back.
Going back to the
I am right, we have to propose and I can't just say, take a fee.
No, not necessarily. This council does do that, but if you'd have all said, yeah, that's absolutely fine, then we'd just put, yeah, we agree. Yeah.
So we've done 3, we're now going to do 1, which is to consider the grant application. We're now going to do 1, which is to consider the grant application from Citizens Advice for 2026 to 2027. And they're asking for 11,000.
Is this from today?
No, it's from 1st of April. Yeah, for that, if you remember, I think they came sometime before Christmas, and you decided that you wanted them to try and come in line with our financial year.
So if you look at the grants in the Port Value, we've funded them this financial year 8,748 up to April. So this is 11,000 for the next financial year.
So that's required. Okay. So, same process. Any questions or comments on their application? James?
Well, I specifically encouraged full council to increase the precept specifically to fund this situation. So I'm completely against, I'm proposing this as a good thing.
Before we go into proposal, are there any comments or questions?
I think they gave us a very good visual representation of the value they brought. We know that it represents a good value in numerical terms with people that need it. Yeah, it's very useful, and it puts us at the centre of the community in that sense. So I think it's very good.
I mean, the only point I would make, not specific to Citizen Advice, but anybody, is that if we've got a budget of 20,000 for this type of work as it grants, then personally, I would prefer to have a cap on the maximum amount that the council gives to any one organisation. And also, I would like to see, not now, but again, talk in the next one, the FGP, to talk about what percentage of something we're prepared to give. So, for example, if somebody asked for £1,000, then maybe we're prepared to give 500 of that £1,000. If somebody asked for 10,000 and we agreed that it is 6,000, then we might say to you, 5,000 of that 10,000. But if it's 20,000, we wouldn't give them 10,000. So I'd like to have a discussion at the next FGP about the rules around how much grants are accepted. But on this occasion, I'm happy to go with that.
Okay, I'll come back to the broad in a moment. And where we are right now, James likes it, Ian likes it.
I'm happy with that.
I think they bring great value to the community. So I'm happy to go with the proposal. I get what Mike's saying in relation to future proposals. The only other thing I would add is that because of the value they bring to community, I think we need to publicise more the fact that we're funding them, and this is actually a very good use of ratepayers' money.
I think that's a very good. I think that reading meeting is we can do it, so I think that should be recorded to vote on that. I do think, Mike, if you want to change the last policy which we're talking about, I think we would need you to I'd raise a discussion paper or make proposals to how we change it. I will say that in the past we have decided, it's not a policy, I think, we have in the past decided only to a part of grant applications. I'm not sure we have a policy, but I certainly was saying that maximum for any one particular application, but this is not the way to discuss, this is not the time to discuss that. If you want to make that change, then discussion paper or proposal, please. Right, we're going to move on now to the next three, and you're going to excuse yourself.
Yeah, I'm
Mine's
taking the lovely part.
Yeah, I'm going to come back for any of this.
Yeah, I haven't got other business. I'm going to watch it on YouTube.
He's ignoring my order.
Yeah, but this is where we can give back jobs because we need less growth. We can volunteer back to do things.
Sorry?
You're not coming back home.
No.
So we can volunteer to do things. That's what happens.
Max, well, we need to finish this up in the next 30 minutes.
Okay.
Right, we're going to move on to item 2. To consider grant application from the OFMD. Same process, I'm going to comments. In a minute, if this machine works, £450. Thank you.
The only thing I would say about this is we have probably some degree of obligation since we all want a prize. John or his successor will sit there and give the prize back. So if you all want to do it.
Yes, Mike.
And the only point I'll make is they're reserved for £17,549. We don't know if they're planning to spend that money this year. They found 450 to that's those reserves. So when we have our grant discussion paper, I'll add that back to the reserves.
It is to a degree policy, but you might want to make it more explicit. James, do you agree?
I have a question again. Is this one for this financial year or next financial year?
It's this.
This.
Paul, you able to get up that spreadsheet, please? So you can see what
I just wanted to check something first.
We've got enough money for this, I think.
We've got the budget. The question is, do we? Because, as Mike has said, they've got £17,000 in reserves. They don't spend like that in the year. As Ian has said, we have been involved with this group for a number of years. We give a prize, so it will be tough not to. But I can see not to. Last year, the grant was 325.
No, that's this year.
Oh, that's this year.
£400 was last year. So far this year, we've given 325. That's quite just checking.
Thank you.
I think they were late in putting their application in.
There was £400 a year before. The only year they didn't was 2024.
Maybe that was the one they missed. I know they missed one.
It's another 425.
Yeah.
But what I was saying was perhaps the 400 and 325 are both time shifted because
Yeah.
they were late in
Yeah,
that 3 years ago.
I know she.
This is then
I do remember.
But I'm now sitting here going, reading this, what would Max do? And I think there's a number of points that Max would be making about the clarity and the need, as Mike says, for this application. But I think fundamentally this council supports the arts and supports people who do stuff, because let's be honest, we're not delivering most of what goes on in Arundel. And if by giving small amounts of financial support to them, it makes them feel wanted and enthused to continue, I think that's a
very good thing.
Thank you.
Just on that point, this year just gone, I think they had a larger number of entrants from certainly from Harold Wise. And talking to Cafe and the people that were around on Sunday, there was a lot of football. I saw a few people around who said they said how ready wants to come around all the lovely towns. So in terms of our strategy for tourism, it's probably cheaper than that than expected.
So my own view is that if we hadn't had the history that we have with these people, like I say, we've got lots of money, why are we sponsoring you? Because there are other people who could be sponsoring. That said, I recognise, to your point, they bring a lot of business to the town. If I wanted as a council to market the town, we've got people to come into the town, and we've got a solid history with these people. So on that basis, I'm being supported too. So do I hear anybody objecting to this application? Okay, so
It's approved, yeah.
we now move on to Creative Angle, 3604, to consider the grant application from Creative Angle. As Max said, although in here it says Creative Angle, it's actually on behalf of the Culture Club, but are you guys aware of the relationship between the Culture Club? Is a group of people, it's only a group, it's an informal gathering, as much as anything else, of people who represent various arts groups within the town. Creative Angle is the biggest, but it includes people like Fringe, it includes people like Excuse, it includes GMS Society, thank you. So there's a whole bunch of people that get together to try and coordinate what they do to make sure that we reduce duplication, we reduce conflict in terms of events that are going on. And last year, for the first time ever, if not in a long time, this application was made to produce a booklet that went around and was very, very well received around the town. The application was made by Creative Angle because the Culture Club is not an organisation. So an organisation needs to make the application, so that's why the applications come through Creative.
I've just got one thing to say. I can't remember exactly how many were produced, but we were asked if we could store them in our office, and they sat in our office for quite some time.
Really?
We distributed them to the QVH, various different places. We ended up with two unopened boxes of like 500 plus another box with
500 per box.
yeah, there were quite a lot that were not given out.
That's not being noted in here, has it?
And although we all thought it looked great, we were just really frustrated that they weren't given out.
That's very good input.
Mm.
Ian,
I would suspect that this year, the work the marketing group doing in particular, that could be improved, giving them out through the school, through visiting parents, etc. would be something that they could do better. Because it was all a bit ad hoc, at the last minute.
it was the first time it was done.
But we did, I mean, I will say we did speak to them a lot and say, they're here, come and get them.
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe that's something we can help with this year.
And then we
See
said,
that happen about further.
it's probably to make what he said in here was the 10,000 brochures were very nearly all distributed. And we regularly receive requests from businesses wanting more. That's
I
what
will confer with my colleagues, but there were a few boxes sitting in that office.
Just also on that basis, there'll be a minimum print on it. So it will be like 10,000, they've got 9,000, which is more than our live shows every month. They're 5,000.
Maybe, sorry, any other thoughts or comments? Because I'm being on this.
Just on again, I mean, it's a bit confusing because of this Culture Club and Creative Angle, what's sort of going on here. Again, it's to do with reserves, and it's not crystal clear exactly what the spendable reserves are, if you like. 45,000 reserves is a lot of money. Some of it is set aside for things. So I think it just again reflects on what we need to look at, perhaps in a bit more detail about grant applications in the future. Have a box basically saying, put your reserves down here, and if some of them are earmarked for something specific, let us know what it leaves. So perhaps it's down to us to change that. However, it was a fantastic brochure. It let you know what goes on in the town day by day, week by week. And I went along to a couple of events purely because I had the brochure and I was available those nights, and I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. The one thing I fed back to the code was there were 10 websites listed in there. Although you are putting together some of the stuff that goes on, there's a lot more going on, so it's still confusing for town's focus on what's happening. And hopefully with our Love Amble developments, we're going to say, go here, click on whatever it is you're interested in within all those organisations. But yeah, it's a really powerful document. It's good value for £2,000. Wonderful.
Changing the question. Did you have a question? No. I'm going to suggest that what we do is we agree a maximum of £2,000 for the culture club, but that before they spend that money, they have a conversation with the council staff to find out how many brochures they're not used and whether that reduces their costs. And also, it's contingent on them working with the marketing working party to make sure that there's some coordination between the two. James, you can have unless anyone objects to that, I'm going to suggest that's really good.
Yeah, I agree with Groville that a thought just occurred in terms of where we are almost entirely funding something and it's a thing, there is a benefit to be had from us actually paying for it directly from us, or paying the VAT on our behalf, and us donating all of those brochures to Creative Amble rather than giving them 2,000 in cash.
I think that's worth considering. And
Yeah, so as part of the operational implementation of it, that's just I just wanted to throw it in what I remembered.
They pay £600 towards it, so we have to create that 600 from them.
Well, no, you can't do. They can't part pay, but if it's 2,600 in VAT, then it's only going to be just over 2,000 ex VAT. And if we are talking about perhaps getting some efficiency out of it and whatever, then it might actually be cheaper for us to pay the whole.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. But then this all of a sudden becomes something that we're now having to do in the
Only
office.
do it if there is a clear value.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the cost and how that works, and we'll be collecting them from there, and that's the council thing. Maybe what we do is we do this in two parts. One, the proposal is we allow the grant up to £2,000, contingent on number one, them agreeing to work with the marketing working party, and number two, they determine exactly how many copies they need, given how many were.
Sorry, how many copies there what?
How many copies they actually want. So they need to discuss with you how many copies were left.
Yeah, because we can tell them how many were left.
So,
And I will also say they didn't even start going out till some of those events had already happened.
so very the minutes show we agreed it.
Mm.
It's subject to them taking care about the number of brochures they order, subject to them working the marketing working party, and subject to them getting the brochures out. That will either happen or won't, but it can make the point that it's not just, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
And
It
lots
was
of people
good, yeah.
commented very, very, very enjoyed it. But maybe to your point, let's not waste it.
So when would you want to pay that money? Because normally when a grant's agreed now.
It'll go on. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think if in writing to them to confirm that they're agreeing to bid, we just ask them to undertake those activities, and then when they're ready to to pay for it, they ask for grants. Does that make sense to you, Anna?
Yeah. So then,
It's got to go out this
but then that potentially will go out in the next financial year.
But if we agree to pay it this year, we cash it out.
There's an opportunity in the next OBA event where members of creative and the town council or on the marketing department working party maybe, so we can say that we'll pay it after that, as we confirm, so in March. So that was sort of a time within.
Joe, what's how you're thinking that, John, just for now? No, we don't cash account, we
Income and expenditure, yeah.
Paying one, I can't return.
no,
Because I try not to do it,
Yeah.
ever. But if we agree to pay it this year, we just hold it over, but to pay it out this year and the next year, can't we do that? Prepayments,
We don't do.
Don't know.
You're saying we should pay money this year?
I'm saying that you need to make a decision when you want it this
Which
year.
financial year you want to pay it?
this,
Yeah.
is this year.
First of April onwards is 26,
Yeah.
27,
Okay, we want to pay it this year, so they need to invoices before the end.
So as long as they talk about 5th of March,
Yeah.
they get invoices, will pay within March. That's it.
Sorry, do you need an invoice from these people or something? What does it work?
No, because if we're giving them a grant of £2,000, then they just give the grant.
Whatever it's convenient.
if we're buying something specifically for them, and the invoice obviously needs to come to us.
Yeah, not doing that this time.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Too quickly.
So do we need to approve?
I think
We murmur.
the murmuring was enough. We've got-
Yeah, you're okay. Yeah. I mean, I know it was a little bit rushed last year. It may be been a little bit more organised this year, but
The production was.
Mm.
Come up before.
And that's when you got time. So I think, I hope this year will be something I don't want to get in their way, but they do need to build more grants. But you've got enough permission to.
yeah. Mhm.
Finally, then, the annual Fringe Festival. Another worthwhile organisation, and they are asking for a grant of 600 against a project costing around 650, they say, including £250 for projects. Questions, thoughts, comments? Mike?
This is a beautifully put together grant application, perfect in every sense. They almost shoot themselves in the foot because they say that they need the money to keep a year's worth of operating monies, which is understandable. But actually their current operating monies are a lot less than about £1,000, so they've got £3,000 in reserves. However, they're sort of hinting they're going to spend a lot more money this year. So I'm happy to go with it. However, I just think grant applications perhaps need looking at before they come to FGP, or actually should need to be clearer about what information we want from people. Not too much information, but just enough information, especially to do with reserves.
Clearer forms.
Simpler, perhaps.
I think that should come out of the policy rather than leaving it on the hoof.
Yeah.
They are spending somewhere, so £3,500 putting the thing on. Yeah, there are £3,500 to put the thing on, and they're going to fund the balance from reserves. I went to a Northamptonshire Community Grants Community Foundation dinner, or award ceremony, I should say, earlier this year, and the Fringe was one of the people that got mentions about grants that were seen as a good thing across the county. I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, I think last year, my understanding is nearly all of it was free.
Yeah.
And they're all in local venues, which is good for businesses. So again, it draws people in, it shows different establishments. So,
We had them here.
yeah, it draws people in.
Yeah.
I think it's all there. If you might, you give your views, James. Let's give this thumbs up. Do we need a proposal, or are we all happy that we award this one? Great, more murmuring, in that case, Fabulous, thank you. I will go back to the main agenda. I think we've now done all the grant applications. So I would simply ask if there is any other business for the report only. Mike.
Yeah, I have something. I'll just see my notes because obviously my memory's not like it used to be. The insurance came up last time. I think at full council, we had about a day to make a decision, so we didn't have time to make a decision. It was about 5,000, 4,000 more than we thought it might be. Is that covered in this year's budget somehow or the other?
No.
No.
So how do we account for it? What's the shortfall for?
There's about 5,000
Mm.
pounds.
Okay.
I think I did say, I mean, there were costs that had gone up, but when I did ask them about the insurance, they said it was the number of claims that we had hanging over us that were making the beaver very twitchy.
I think also the market is hard.
Yeah.
So I think the question is not was the quote good.
No, I know. Oh, I know. Yeah. We've got to get some from
It's
reserves.
a good spot. So we've got two options. At least option number one is we take it from another budget. I think this only we want to do that. Option number two, sorry, that's out of this year, isn't it? So it's too late to start option on budgets. Maybe, unless Paul is aware of another budget that might have spare.
Stands out at the moment.
The second option, which may be actually a better option, would be to say that we'll take that out of reserves because it has to be paid. We've agreed to pay, we need to have insurance. So we need, that's a general reserve debit.
It's a third option. Don't have insurance. That's a very good option.
I think we're legally obliged to have insurance, actually, particularly public liability. Mike, any
So
thoughts?
I would ask Paul, to, not right now, but to have a look at the overall budget towards the end of the year. Clearly, it's not reserves, we don't have reserves, but if not, spend what's required.
Yeah, James.
Yeah, so in agreeing to renew the insurance, we agreed to overspend that budget item, so that's done deal. I personally don't see any great value to, at the end of the year, juggling a surplus from this budget line to this budget line to just cancel it out, because ultimately it will cancel itself out at the bottom. But Mike's point about not just the budget reporting, but our accounting, I think could also be simplified so that we could see more easily exactly what the impact of that was and what our running surplus or overspend was.
What do we do? Just jump over and say, this answer is business report only, discussion. I think as part of the year-end processes, we're happy to talk it because Jamie said we make a decision. But as this is for report only, I think we have to be there. But I think the reason is very good for us. You said you have 2 things. No, sorry. I'm sorry. James,
I have nothing.
any other business? Emma, any other business?
Nothing.
Paul, any other business? Good. In that case, we'll call the meeting to a close at 9:24.